All right, the time being 1 o'clock, I'm going to open up the subcommittee on SB 170. As always, we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, so we are joined, members of the subcommittee, Representative Hicks, Representative Reinfurt, Representative Hegner. Welcome. Thank you for coming, whether I volunteered you or not. I appreciate you being here. So with that, I want to open up. This isn't a public hearing, but I want to open up and give an opportunity for any members of the public to comment on this bill as it was presented to us, if you'd like that opportunity. We will be probably going through section by section, making edits, probably adding some additional things onto it. So at that point, I'll obviously allow you the opportunity to comment then. But if anybody has anything opening to say, come up now. All right. So with that, what I'm looking to do with this, because it seems like it's a bill that covers a lot of different areas, is to probably go section by section and discuss each one, as well as anything else that we can put on this to improve it as written. So with that, I want to start with section 1 that has to do with fair, equal housing opportunity without discrimination. So what this bill would do is it would be what this section would do is it would be the version that the House sent over to the Senate relative to unrelated renters, HB 457. If you remember that right, we amended HB 457 with this sentence of language here. Is the committee following me?
Yep.
So at the end, cities, towns, municipalities shall not mandate occupants of housing be related by blood or marriage. I have something additional to add to this because I believe it will address the specific situation in Durham. I believe what we need to do is add in the clause of housing protections, we need to add educational status as a protected class, because if we add educational status, it would then make it so towns like Durham cannot say, if you're in school, you have to live in a certain zone. And I think that was the whole reason we were trying to pass that, was to make sure that students were given equal access to opportunity for housing in whatever zone they choose to live in, that's residential and other families qualify for.
If you do that, does
Put your
that,
mic on. Representative Reinfurt.
if you do that with that language, does that exclude them from the non-related, or does this cover that?
Well,
You know what I mean? Oh, follow up. So that it doesn't limit them to 3 unrelated people if you make them a protected by adding an education.
so the unrelated thing is covered by that last sentence that says cities, towns, municipalities shall not mandate occupants of housing be related by blood or marriage. What I would do is add, after family status, I would add education status. And then go comma, physical or mental disability, national origin. And what that would do is currently what's happening are towns are designating certain zones of a community to be student housing zones. So if that's the case where they can only live in specific areas, if we add educational status, we know that that itself is a protected class and they cannot be precluded to all areas of the zone. Representative Hicks.
Thanks. So my question when I was listening to this the other day is, status to me means you either have it or you don't. Right? So marital status, you're married or you're unmarried. So could that be interpreted to mean I have been to school or I have not been to school? Versus I'm currently a student.
Enrollment status?
Enrollment status would make more sense. That was my thought the other day on how that would be interpreted.
I agree. I concur.
Educational enrollment status?
I mean, you would have to say more than just enrollment, because then you could be enrolled in a drug trial. Right.
I feel like education status though covers, like, God forbid a town would ever be like, bachelor degree people can live here.
Well, that's my
master's degree people. You know what? I'm not going to put it past them, but they might.
Really?
But I think what education status would cover, I believe what you're referring to with the you have education, you don't, but I think it would also cover if you were in school or not.
question.
Go ahead.
But what if you had just graduated? So you're post-grad? You're still education status, but you're no longer going to school.
Yeah, you're not, I mean,
And then does that extend? Well, I've lived here for 6 months or for a year now, and now I have to move out because what's my education status? I still have that status. So
well, this would preclude them from saying you have to move out because you graduated school.
right. But how long does that last? 5 years, 10 years? See what I mean?
Yeah.
Active enrollment status, active. I mean, I don't want to get too
So you're
wordy,
talking
but
about
at the same
students,
time.
right? So
Yeah.
specifically students. And students, and we're specifically talking about students in schools like Keene and Dartmouth and UNH and Plymouth, right? Or St. A's. So it would be school enrollment status.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Enrollment.
All right, I'm just gonna grab one more copy as like a final edit copy.
Yeah.
I just wonder what games towns will play.
But I think that leaves it open to interpretation. And you know.
I mean, I don't want to live in a community with all PhDs. That would be terrible.
You are a PhD.
I hope that's on record.
It is. Does
How
anybody
boring of a.
does anybody from the public have anything to comment regarding this part of the bill? Ms. Burns, do you have anything to say? Come on up.
Other than they don't like it.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I similarly did question whether the language that was being proposed was vague as far as what it means to have educational status. I don't think that got to what you were trying to do. However, from a bigger picture point of view, it is significant to add to the protected classes within 354A8 that this would be a new protected class, could have bigger implications beyond this statute. It could become potentially seen as a new protected class that bigger picture New Hampshire has to recognize, just something to put in your mind. I think the bigger picture, two bigger picture issues here, we're talking about putting zoning mandate related language into 354A8. Really, that's what line 7 and 8, the added language already is a zoning mandate into a bill or into a statute that does not have anything to do with zoning. And additional big picture comment would be, I do think that under what you're discussing, you are potentially expanding the ability of fraternities, sororities, and other large group living situations that are essentially extensions of dormitories to expand out anywhere into a city or town. While I recognize that housing for students is important, the university or the college has that ultimate responsibility for ensuring that they're housed adequately. And I do not believe that expanding that out into any area of town by taking away the ability of the municipality to regulate it is going to strike a fair balance between the needs and desires of full-time residents and some of these more group living type of situations that are akin to sororities and fraternities. Huge change you're proposing here.
Okay. With regards to your comment about putting a zoning mandate into this protection, the 354A, towns can't say that black people have to live in this certain part of the town, right?
Of course not.
So I guess I'm wondering, there's already zoning implications in this part of the law.
This is really talking about the ability to obtain housing from sort of a private market point of view, right? You can't discriminate when people access housing, when they're renting, when they're buying. You cannot take into account any of these protected classes, as should be the case. But now we're stepping out of that and we're stepping more into what municipalities can say is allowed here, not allowed here per zoning. I think that they're two different things. I just think that they're two different things. We're talking about accessing housing and not being discriminated against versus what municipalities can write into zoning about where permitted uses are allowed.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, comments from the subcommittee on this school enrollment status? Are we comfortable keeping it in there, or what would you like?
So I'm going back to comments that Representative Howland made on the previous bill, talking about the different classifications of sort of rooming houses versus dormitories, or are they rooming houses? Are they multifamily? Are they, I don't have an answer for this. I think it's pretty complicated. I know that there are many in the town of Durham that want this changed from the testimony we heard, but then the town administrator doesn't want it changed, right? So I'm wondering if this, I don't know. I don't know how to resolve this issue with the students.
So I believe with the whole comment about frat houses being allowed in every zone, I don't think that necessarily applies here, because the existing fire code, building codes, all those things would already apply and take place. So towns already have the discretion to follow the fire code and the building code. So if there's a house that's not suitable to have a frat house in one area of the town, it's not going to be there, because the fire code does not permit the property to have that. I guess what we're doing is we want to make sure that towns like Durham are not regulating where students can live. So I don't know if the protected class you add school enrollment status, education status, enrollment. The school enrollment status I read as whether you are or not enrolled in school. That should not be a precursor of where you can live in town. That's all I read it as. So I don't see it as like something vague that makes it unclear, or I think it's very clear.
So it's not saying that we're protecting students, that only students can live here. We're saying students can live anywhere. And you can't limit the number of students that can live together by saying only 3.
Yes, but as long as it's following the existing fire code.
Right, exactly, exactly. So if your school is here and student wants to live here, they can. But if student wants to live here because it's near grandma, they can do that too. And if they want to bring 3 of their friends to live here, they could do that too. That's what this is saying. Is that right?
All right. Let's move on. So we're starting at the new section 2, Roman numeral 1. Cities, towns, municipalities, unincorporated places shall not require more stringent test pitting requirement for septic systems than the Department of DES. If you remember back to the testimony on this bill, I had asked a building inspector from the town of Raymond what more stringent requirements would they require over the Department of DES, and I feel like I got unclear answers. I believe the Municipal Association provided me with maybe one example of when the town would need a more stringent requirement, but I believe the existing state requirements around test pitting covers all areas of the state and all different environmental implications in that area of the state. So, Rainey, could you come up, please, and talk to me about DES test pitting requirements, please? Just because you're in the room, I'm going to call on you.
For the record, Rainey Pelletier, I'm the director of the water division at DES and been there a long time. And I think when it comes into the regulations or the rules, if you will, for subsurface systems, subdivisions, any land development progress, I think our requirements have been proven over the past. As you know, Chair, I've been there a long time. Our test pit requirements have proven to be very protective of not only groundwater but surface water. I think where you get into situations where septic systems have a bad rap, a lot of them are probably don't have state approval. Hence, they may be in the groundwater, they may be in the seasonal high water table, and that, in fact, could prevent a situation where we get a nutrient load that goes through surface water whether it be a lake or a pond. But I will say that all the years I've been at DES, and there's been a lot of them, I haven't seen a bedrock well contaminated from a septic system. I have seen shallow dug wells that were in the groundwater table adjacent to systems that probably weren't state approved back in the day. So I think our current regulations are more than adequate to protect the groundwater and surface water of the state is what we do. We also have stormwater regulations that look at pre and post development to see what kind of runoff you're going to have. We also permit any roads that are over 2,000 feet. And so I think we have a pretty comprehensive set of rules that really have a pretty good handle on the regulations when it comes to land development. I think we've always been of the attitude that municipalities in some situations have greater setbacks than we do, and that's been their choice locally. But let me be very clear, our regulations when it comes to land development, I think are more than adequate, and in some situations, maybe really conservative. So I think they bode us well. I've been at basically in the inception of septic systems. I started DES in '73, so I have a very long history of what the success has been of our current regulations. So I feel very comfortable to reiterate that our criteria for development, I think, are more than sound.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Pelletier? I have a quick one. Can you give me an example where a town would need to require more stringent test pitting requirements?
Considering what I had just said about our regulations, I think we've always had the thought process that towns were local control. They looked at what they did, but our standards have always been considered baseline minimums. I think they are adequate, again, to reiterate, but if a town so chooses by the claim that our regulations aren't adequate, then I would disagree with that.
You would disagree that your regulations are adequate?
That ours are not adequate. They are. You
would disagree? Okay. Yeah.
They are more than adequate.
Okay. Representative Hicks.
Thank you. So I could ask this question in different ways because this is a quote unquote pro-housing bill to encourage and facilitate more housing. How might a town have more stringent requirements to prevent more housing?
Well, I think that a lot of towns historically over the years have had varying lot sizes, various setbacks from side property lines. Some towns have wetland setbacks, which we do not. We obviously have regulations that control impacting wetlands, but no setbacks. So, I mean, we've always been of the mindset that towns, in many situations, or most situations, their boards choose to see how they want the town to grow.
Okay. Other questions? Good. Thank you. So I want to address section Roman numeral 1 and 2 at the same time. I believe they're related. Does the committee see any reason to remove that or change those sections?
I'm fine with them. We just went and got a permit for another 2-car garage on our property, and we had to get state approval because we live on a lake. And once we went through that whole process, then we had to go to the town, and the town said, we don't care what the state did. This is what our requirements are, and they were different. So in my mind, this makes it so that it would be the same because it was an entirely different set of procedures that we had to follow. And it was because of the setback from the water, the 50 feet variance versus the 100 feet. And our town required exactly 100. So all I had to do then was move my building, which I had space on my property, and we got the approval right away. Had we not, we would have had to go through a huge rigmarole. So I'm in support of verbiage that makes it identical. If what the state is doing is the more stringent of or stringent enough, I think that local planning boards and zoning boards can follow suit and still be within, you know, regulatory requirements, my opinion.
Okay, so sections 1 or 2. Anybody have any comments on these sections from the public? Go ahead, Brody. Mr. Deshays, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the subcommittee. So I did call yesterday, DS specifically, their, I'm trying to remember the name of the department, but had to do with the well siting and the septic system approvals and everything. And I was told that the state won't do a state review until someone has gone through the municipal review. That's what I was told. And so I would encourage someone to speak to maybe DS further, but that's at least what David from their department had told me yesterday. I will also point out our biggest concerns is really only it really only has to do with some municipalities will require for new private residential wells PFAS testing, especially for subdivisions, and so that's been a significant issue. We also know that that SB 170, if the language intends to only use the state's their requirements, which we do, we understand that the state has minimum requirements and those are the minimum, but they're safe. That we would have concerns that there would be a nullification of aquifer wellhead protection overlay districts. And there are some municipalities that do that when they're looking at, perk tests or when they're looking at wellhead protections and things of that nature. An example would be Goffstown has that in some of their zoning districts to protect public drinking water to make sure that waste disposal doesn't impact the public drinking water depending on the percolation of the soil. So those are the two kind of impacts that we could see speaking with BEA and speaking with DES and also looking over municipalities' regulations. So there are some cases too where municipalities will have larger residential well radius requirements too. So some might do larger than the minimum of 75, but have slightly larger, depending again on how the soil percolates and depending on the aquifers in the municipality. So I just wanted to share, and I sent all this to the entire House Housing Committee as an email yesterday at around 2:00. So you should have that email with that information and also a list from OPD of all the municipalities that have some of these very limited regulations that protect groundwater and prevent waste disposal from getting mixed with that groundwater and the local aquifers.
Thank you. Questions?
Thanks.
Mr. Mayberry?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for committee members. I brought with me today to answer some of these questions, especially on these two. A real live builder. He actually pounds nails for a living, unlike me. So I'd like to bring forward, if I may please, Joshua Manning from Lewis Builders, who has lived this nightmare. And in talking, and I'll let Mr. Pelletier speak for themselves, but the town, when you talk about these town reviews, the town has to ask for it. It's not an automatic. So, but I'll let him clarify better. But Josh has built.
In addition to being a builder, Joshua Manning, Lewis Builders, member of the Home Builders Association. In addition to being a builder developer, I'm also a licensed septic designer. I've had my license for over 15 years now, and we deal with this stuff day in and day out. And the state's requirements right now are more than adequate. What we find is any town's requirements that are more stringent than this, they're just trying to get in the way of building and slow things down. It's not acceptable. Some of these towns, they come out. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a review process or that they shouldn't be allowed to witness a test pit or be involved with the process. I'm saying that the way you have it written is perfect. They can't be any more strict than the state. And that's the real simple. It's real simple. So instead of doing, I got to do one test pit for a septic system on a lot, because some towns in the Seacoast area, they want multiple test pits, or they want some soil conservation group to come out and witness the test pit. That's more stringent than the state, because that's ridiculous. Some of those things get to be ridiculous. And that's where we're trying to draw the line. Why should we, if the state says 75-foot radius is okay for a well, why should it be any greater? The state's also concerned with looking out for drinking water and public, interest, and they look at soils, they look at everything. So that's all I got to say, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for
Thank you
Mr.
for the
Manning?
opportunity.
Representative Reinford.
So you build in more than one town, obviously. You're in
Yes,
several different
several
towns.
southern New Hampshire
So are you finding that each town is slightly different from one another
They
and
do, they
as
all do
opposed to just a
things, they
state?
all do things slightly different.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Some
in your
towns
opi-
utilize outside services to witness test pits. Some towns require you do more than the one test pit that the state tells you need to do for septic design. There's different requirements, so.
Representative Hicks.
Thank you. So you sort of answered this question. But I'm going to ask for another example. Please don't name the town. Just another example of the way that these two particular things, the test pits and the wells siting, how are towns using more stringent requirements to impede housing? Can you give me just a very practical
Could you
example?
repeat the last part of that?
So how are towns actually using more stringent requirements to impede housing development?
It just slows things down primarily. It's just the time and money to slow things down to do more work, up front.
Representative.
Okay, so in your opinion then, if everything were to be uniform across the state, it would make developing housing that much easier and
Absolutely.
quicker?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Expectations would be clear. We know what to expect.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, is everyone okay with sections 1 or 2 as is? Roman numerals 1 or 2? Yes. All right. Let's go to number 3. Municipalities shall not limit the maximum road length as to impede development, provided that the proposed roadway or extension thereof complies with state fire code.
May I comment?
Yep.
So this became an issue in the city of Concord years ago when we put a maximum length. And at the time I had I didn't understand why. And I still don't understand why. If somebody wants to be farther away from emergency services, that seems to be their right to do that. So I was actually happy to see this in here. So
Okay. Yes. All right. Number 4, cities, towns, municipalities shall not impose a cap on number of housing lots on dead end roads or streets. Senator Murphy, I see you here. Can you talk to me a little bit about why this was put in place? Because I have some questions about it myself. Seeing how you amended the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the housing roundtables that I attended, this was brought up as an issue by at least 2 people, 2 builders, and they indicated that some towns were using the lot caps along roads as a way to prevent development. And that's why it's in there.
Okay. And would you be opposed to anything on here that says provided there's adequate water sewer capacity?
I wouldn't object to that. I think that's a reasonable adjustment.
I think, okay. Are we okay with that? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5, Roman numeral 5. Cities, towns, municipalities shall permit utilities, including septic systems, wells, electric systems, drainage structures, other utilities to be placed in open spaces or perimeter buffers of subdivisions as applicable, provided that such open spaces or perimeter buffers are not wetland, shoreland protected. You want an explanation on that? Mr. Bayberry, yep.
Thank you. When you go into a development, sometimes you'll see those candy cane graveyards in the middle of a circle. So everyone can have a shared septic system. This would say that if you're doing your utilities below ground and you want to put the transformer near the entrance, if it's an open space, you can put that there. It doesn't do anything, it just sits there. There are some designs that say you can't, if you think of it, take a box, put a light bulb in it, and they'll say, these are open spaces. You can't do anything on the periphery. But if we're doing something such as a shared septic, shared leach field, an electric transformer, swing sets, playgrounds, things that don't have its own life, its own entity, but they're just part of that development, that allows you to then utilize that open space. It doesn't create more housing, it just opens up some more. So it's not adding buildings to the periphery, it's the infrastructure behind it. Stormwater drains are a good example. You'll see them behind some homes. Does that help or did I make it worse?
Good.
Thank you.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay. Number 6, cities, towns, municipalities shall stamp and accept, this is a good one, shall stamp and accept changes to plans within 3 days that they are submitted after initial review when requested by that city, town, or municipality, provided that the developer has made the requested alterations based on initial planning board review. I think this was raised because somebody would come with a presentation to a planning board. They'd be like, oh, I want, a road over here, or like a bus stop right here. And then they do that. And then the next meeting, they'd be like, actually, I want 4 trees over here. And it would just kind of push the process out. So I think what this would do would establish 3 days after they're submitted or after the meeting. So if a planning board member immediately following the meeting was like, you know what I want? Am I not saying this? Oh, and Matt Mayberry has an amendment to this too. Like within a few days. Yeah, I think we actually, I think I have it. It's right here. Yep, thank you. Forgot about the amendment for this.
And this was clarifying language. I can speak to this, Chairman.
I think it's pretty clear. You understand it? Representative Hicks?
In the second to last line, the word must is used. We typically use shall. Is there a reason for must versus shall?
I'm okay with shall. I think that's more legalese. I think it does the same thing.
I think this is better than what is in the bill.
I agree. Representative Reinford.
So I like the business days as opposed to just 3 days. But does this allow time if there needs to be like a third party review? Because that's what was brought up when we did the initial committee, that if there needed to be some type of a third party review, that they needed to have time to do that. So does the 5 business days allow for that?
Go ahead. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Right.
It could through an agreement through the municipality and the developer. If it's just common sense, we're all humans, and it's like we don't have the expertise. We're hiring them out. It'll be day 7, of course. If any of my members are that stupid, let me know and I'll go correct them. I think the intent is here of moving this along.
Okay. So is the intention of the 5 days versus the 30 days? If you give them 5, they'll take 5. If you give them 30, they'll take 30?
Yes, because also, as we heard earlier on another bill on testimony, the town of Madbury, for instance, if you said 30 days, is it work days? Was it calendar days? Was it business days? And when you have a town that's open 3 days a week for limited hours, it could be 10 weeks. So we wanted to keep folks accountable, moving it forward, 5 business days.
How does this accommodate if there's a holiday? Does the mere definition of business day
The-
override holiday?
No, holidays are non-business days.
Okay.
But this
That's what I
was,
mean,
but
yeah.
this was, let me say on this part, a developer comes up, lays out the plan, you have the meeting, you go through the TRC and the TRW, you say, I would like a fence line here, I like a tree line here, and I would like a granite stone right here. Great. Developer goes back, moves forward. The town has the municipality has the 5 days to say, ooh, wait, we forgot. We'd like a water fountain right here or a playground. We forgot to add that. Okay, that's within it. Weekends don't count, holidays don't count because no one's doing business, but
Mr. Maber, you were in the last subcommittee meeting, the previous one today, and we had a discussion about calendar days versus business days, and we decided on calendar days. I'm wondering if you would think 7 calendar days.
Perfect.
I mean, you wanted 14 in the last subcommittee hearing. So we talked about calendar days just to prevent that question that you're having.
yep, that works to keep it all consistent across the board for everyone.
Yep.
Yep.
A week. Okay, so Mr. Mayberry, are there ever situations where a town would significantly alter, I'm sure there are, like the size or the scope of projects? Can
It's
you
the-
talk to me about that? I think I want to add something in here that says makes the town liable if there are certain significant amount of changes to the proposed structure.
This actually came forward from a story from a developer in a town in the southern tier. And what would happen is they did exactly what we had talked about. We're doing 55 plus. Great. We'd like 6-foot trees across the back. That's great. They put 6-foot trees in. Oh, those are deciduous trees. We wanted conifers. Sorry. Rip them out, put in pine trees. I wish I was kidding. 6 foot, no, we really want 9 feet, and we want them closer together. So there's a screen between the residence and the road. Big sigh, big exhale. Sure. Anything else? No, we think we're good. Ripped out those trees again, put in the longer ones, put them closer together. They came back again through the process, and they said, we would like you to move the trash receptacles from the road side of the street to the other side of the street, and we like extra screening on it. At that point in time, my builder, who was also on my board of directors, called me up and said, fix this. This has gone for 5 months, and there's no end to it. There's got to be an end to this. Why couldn't they do it all at once? Say, I want 8-foot conifers. I would like you to move the receptacles across the way with screening. You do that, we're good. They should be able to do that in 7 calendar days.
Representative Hicks.
So I understand this. I've actually experienced this. My years on the planning board, not necessarily municipality, but planning board members as well. But we have a clock now, right? So we have a clock for a non-regional development and a different clock for a DRI. Doesn't that take care of quite a bit of this? I mean, it's a little different, but doesn't the clock take care of the problem of 5 months that you're talking about?
Yes, this does.
And this helps with that as well.
Very much, because there's always those ambiguous for things, municipal health, municipal safety, municipal, just because we want to. Loophole is into all of these events. I'm sure I brought Mr. Manning, he could tell you some specifics, but my builders feel real strongly about this one because it's the games that people play to kick the can down the road.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, and the last thing, so are we okay with this amendment? We're going to change 5 business days to 7 calendar days And then further down to change must to shall. Okay. What? Yes, thank you for that legalese. All right. So subparagraph 3, zoning ordinances, K, after J, to limit road frontage requirements and setbacks for lot lines to no more than 50 feet to improve housing density, ensuring these limitations are consistent with existing shoreline protection standards and do not override environmental standards. How are we feeling? Representative Hicks.
So there's a letter from the city manager here in Concord that expresses concern about this because of clearly density. And primarily, I think that the issue is curb cuts, right? So you have driveways that are too close together that present traffic conflicts. And I understand that, especially in some of our more densely populated areas where there's houses or businesses. A lot of curb cuts tends to lead to more traffic conflicts. So I am sympathetic to that argument, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more.
I'm just gonna look up the RSA, see where it's sitting. What about establishing a maximum that can be maximum setback requirement? So a state no more than 50 feet.
So right now, towns have different setbacks from the front, from the lot line right now, because I know our town in particular is not 50 feet. And in building on lots that have a 50-foot setback and you're looking at being on water, you're not going to be able to build because you need that shorter setback on the front in order to accommodate the setback to the water. So in towns that are like that would be a problem.
Brody.
Yeah, so I just want to, on the last section, I just want to point out that section conflicts with RSA 674:37 and RSA 478:1-A, which kind of already establishes the process for registering plats at the Register of Deeds. So you're amending one statute that'll conflict with others. So just to flag that. But under this section, our concern is that specific language, this specific language on page 2 of the bill, lines 3 through 6, would conflict with RSA 483-B:3 Roman 2, which states, quote, when the standards and practices established in this chapter conflict with other local or state laws and rules, the more stringent standard shall control. And it also likely conflicts with RSA 483-B:8(2), which encourages and permits municipalities to adopt local regulations to promote shoreland protections. And the biggest examples as to why, I mean, very often your municipalities on their shoreland districts, because they'll have a zoning district that will be shoreland, they might have more stringent requirements to protect the shoreline. And especially now where we've seen issues with failing septic systems or septic systems that aren't built to state code because they pre-exist some of the state laws and state code, especially on islands. So think like, for example, in Tuftonboro, you'd think like Cow Island or, Chase Island, where they have these septic systems that aren't to code. They're going to want for new structures and new systems that there be an additional setback requirement so there isn't as much coli in the water. Again, state resource, but still impacts the municipality. And again, they're going to want to try to decrease the amount of runoff from buildings that have impervious surfaces or the driveway, whether it's a paved or a dirt driveway, different sediment that runs into the water and creates the cyanobacteria blooms that we've been seeing. I mean, that really is one of the biggest reasons why cyanobacteria has been increasing so much across the state, is runoff from residential development or updating these existing homes, these camps, and turning them into, newer versions of themselves, or renovating them and stuff, and improving the roads. And there are nonprofits. An example might be the Wentworth Watershed Association that does a lot of training and tries to encourage seasonal homeowners, or small little developments with these seasonal homes, or even dirt roads, where they try to get them to crown the roads so the runoff goes more off. But really, a lot of these roads in New Hampshire that are shorefront, especially if they're downhill, they're just channels for sediment to increase cyanobacteria. So having these setback requirements actually is a net benefit for municipalities to be enforcing that to the state and tourism. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Representative Hicks.
So one of the questions I have is, there are two separate issues here, right? So road frontage and then setback for lot lines. It seems to me those are two separate issues that are combined in this paragraph. Should we either change it or remove one of them, separate it? I don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Mayberry, do you have a comment?
Certainly, and I agree with you, Representative. There are two different items on here. The road frontage was to help create some density, some shared driveway. I'm thinking, camps and more seasonal homes, shared driveways. And if you have 15 acres but you have a small frontage, and you want to put a cabin in the back for your children, grandchildren, whatever you like to do, that would allow you to do that because the clever way that municipalities will look at this on the back end is they'll increase their road frontage. Okay, we have to be at we'll say a 2-acre minimum, but we're going to request a 300-foot road frontage. So now you're going to get these little skinny pencil lots along the side of the road with nothing behind it. It's just closing a loophole that we foresaw coming. What's going to happen next? What happens the day after tomorrow? And so this addresses that, because they'll just change the setbacks. They'll say 10-acre lot, you've got to be 250 feet setbacks on each side. No, you have to have 300 feet of frontage. No. They're going to try to find ways to limit possibilities, and we're addressing them up front. So if you want to split this and create two separate entities, then certainly, but that's why we thought they were tied together on one parcel.
What do we think? Representative Hicks.
Yeah, thank you. So I understand that, and thank you for the explanation. I would love to see more shared driveways. This is, and in my experience with planning board, if we had more shared driveways, we would have fewer problems, at least in the city of Concord, and our more densely populated or higher volume roads in Concord. But we're not going to put that in here. So, I was asking people in the city, well, what would be better? And they actually just said 75 feet would be fine. So I don't know. It's like they're just throwing out numbers. I don't know if there's been any study about that, but I just think that road frontage piece is the one that bothers me more than the other piece.
And it would encourage shared driveways, and it does cut down the amount of asphalt and those non-pervious surfaces we were talking about earlier.
So would you propose to get rid of road frontage? Is that what you're saying?
Well, now I have something to think about because of the hypothetical that Mr. Mayberry presented, which I had not considered before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so what do we want to do with this section? Would you be okay if we changed it to 75 feet? That'd be what?
I just threw that number up because that's what I heard from somebody in the city.
Like 75
I
feet
don't
for
know the
road
magic
frontage and then 50 feet for setbacks.
See, I'm really somebody else can be more concerned about the other piece, but I'm more concerned about the road frontage. So making that a bit longer or bigger for me would be preferable. The number I don't know. I understand the argument about then making the frontage, if that isn't in there, making the frontage hundreds of feet.
Well, and it's also you're able to subdivide the back half of your property too
Right.
if you have less frontage, and
Right.
I think that will create more housing itself too.
Yeah, I get that, and I think it's a good tool for that. Yeah, I can support that.
Okay. Representative Hicks, Hegner,
I concur.
perfect. Good. All right. So the one other thing I want to talk about before I summarize our changes is this is a great bill, but I always think that these bills can get better provided they put on House priorities. So I'm glad Senator Murphy's in the room to hear this. It's my hope that the Senate Commerce Committee passes our accessory dwelling unit bill and our parking bill. But should they not, this is a great vehicle to reassert our authority. So I'm hoping that we can leave that language off. But after I go over the changes to 170, if there's some way that those bills are somehow disposed of in a way I don't want them to be disposed of, or we don't want them to be, this is a great place to put them. So you might see during the day of the it's 3 weeks from now or whatever, I might have an amendment that adds some housing committee priorities. And I just want you guys to be aware of that before we move forward so you don't feel blindsided during the executive session. Everyone comfortable with that? All right. Okay. So changes that we're making, I'll start from the top. Page 1, line 5, right after family status, it's going to say comma, school enrollment status, comma, physical or mental disability. Okay? We're going to keep cities, towns, municipalities shall not mandate the occupants of housing be related to blood or marriage. That is consistent with our position on HB 457. We're going to keep section Roman numeral further down the page, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, Roman numeral 4. We're going to add provided that there is adequate water sewer capacity. Roman numeral 6. We're going to add the changes that were given to us with a an amendment that was given to us, but in the amendment we're going to change 5 business days to 7 calendar days, and then further down in the amendment we're going to say must to shall, and then flip over the page 2. K, we're going to separate that out, limit road frontage to 75 feet and 50 feet for setbacks. And the effective date, that's the same. That's a year from July. Do we need to move that up? It's like over a year. It's a year from July. Yeah, that's probably.
Is there something that we lose?
Is there a pressing need to move this up, or is the effective date? You okay with 6 months?
It's time to do their thing.
Yep. All right, 6 months. So let's change. All right.
Because that takes you to the fall.
Depending on when the bill is possible. Depends really, usually it's better to have the dates, that they've had it happening.
Yeah, that's okay if they conflict, because at the end of the day, it's the state law that over. Well, and I'm glad that New Hampshire Municipal Association is here to educate the local departments on who has the authority. We can go January 1st, 2026 if you want.
Yeah, you definitely would make a town meeting. Probably best to have the enactment after town meeting, but.
How about November 1st and again, kicking the can down the road?
Okay. All right. Subcommittee, I don't think we need a formal, do we want to vote or do we have a deal? Okay, so I'm going to create an amendment for this bill and I'm going to put all of your names on it. So then that we can present this in the executive session. It's going to happen in a couple weeks. Sound good? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.